What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Back with the weather reports and everything. I'm sorry I didn't do weather reports over the last severe system that we had. I was actually subject to that system as well, so it was ugly for me just as it was ugly for a lot of people across the southeast. And it was a rough system that from the GFS models I was looking at, it seems like everything had changed once it got to the very close range NAM models, and it, by the way it was looking, it didn't look as promising or as extreme as I anticipated when I first looked at the GFS models. But then as we got closer to it, within about 24 to 48 hours, it seems like all these levels had completely changed, and it was something that was completely unpredictable. So, that was definitely a bad system that we went through, bad couple systems that we went through, really. So, moving on, we have another system that is going to be waving across. I'm in Georgia, so looking at Georgia, we're looking about the 9th, the 8th and the 9th, going through the southeast regions around that time. But I got the GFS model right here, Pivotal Weather. I'm gonna kind of like run through it here and go over a couple of things. So we're looking at today right now. And as we kind of progress through the models, nothing that's really alarming. A couple of the high pressure systems moving through, a low pressure system down here in Mexico. A couple of those lows coming from the northwest. And as these lows progress out in this more drier air that we have out here out west that's going on right now. All right, and you see this kind of incorporating system here in the northwest kind of moving through. Well, that's going to kind of, you'll see that low move through, and it's going to kind of collect toward the center of the country a little bit, and you'll see how that progresses. So I'm just going to jump the gun here until we start to see that. Now you can see a couple of these little cells building here in Kansas and Oklahoma, or I mean rather Nebraska and Kansas. And then they kind of overspread. You got a little bit, going on there in Iowa. And I mean, nothing really that looks like it's really severe or anything like that. Just a little bit of adverse weather effects going on, going through Iowa, and then across the towards the northeast. And this is, mostly winds, rain, snow. As you guys got the lower temperatures up there and everything, so you're going to get some of that snow that's incorporated in there if you guys are in the Wisconsin, Michigan areas, and as it kind of moves through there, even Illinois, Indiana, some of those, and then as it kind of moves further in. But we got a higher system here that's going to be forecast for some snow that's going to be going on there, high precipitation levels for snow. So beware for some winter weather that's going to be coming up there, and that is, so right now we're looking at around the 6th. So that's going to be pretty much the 4th to the 6th as it moves into the northern Ohio region and then cutting across, and it kind of stabilizes later on here in northern Pennsylvania, and this kind of sits here for a little bit. And it just kind of bobs there for a cork, or like a cork for a little bit as the low moves through, and then it eventually pushes out to the Atlantic Ocean, and that's what the models are showing right now. But then you can see these systems that are kind of building up here behind here. Got a snow forecast that's going on here towards the northwest, moving across the parts of Idaho, some northern Utah and Montana, going into Wyoming, that kind of area there. And as these systems are kind of building, then you see this collection of system that's going, that's going to be coming through South Dakota, North Dakota region, and some of Montana. You're getting a little bit of that, you know what I mean? But it looks like those are pretty moderate systems at this point. I don't think that there's a whole lot of severe risk with this. So definitely going to get some winter weather with that. And that's what I would be worried about, is definitely a lot of snow up there. And anybody who's lived out in the West, you know what I mean, these parts of Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, you get a lot of very harsh winter weather out there, and very, very cold temperatures, so that's kind of what you're looking at. And in this blue region here, that's where those really cold temperatures are going to be coming through, you know what I mean? So you're going to get those frigid temperatures. Further on in the south, you're looking at a lot of it, those balancing here, you know what I mean? Those wind drifts that are going to be going through those wind fields. And so it's going to be windy, it's going to be cold, it's going to be snowy as it gets up into these areas. And right now we are looking at the 7th as that moves through. But Now you're starting to see this system that's going to be kind of stretching through the north, or the southeast, going through here, the southeast region, where they're looking in the Arclitex region, and you can start to see these little tiny cells that are starting to kind of, build up here. Marginal severe. We got a little bit of that elevated mixed layer going on and that heating. LCL isn't too bad right now, but it will get lower as this progresses. So it just kind of sits there for a little bit until later on we get a lot of this precipitation and some marginal severe weather going through there. And this is, the Missouri, northern Arkansas region as it kind of pulls in the southern end through Texas and then eventually moves into Arkansas later on. And now we're getting into the tornado risk areas where these indices are supporting updrafts. And so you see this hook right here, that little hook right there. It doesn't always indicate tornadic activity in storms, but we have supporting factors. We got, some hail development, some supercell development. We got some LCL height that is very, very low right now. You know what I mean? Getting, the wind fields and everything are looking supportive. Not a whole lot of disturbance there. So you got the tornado risk that's significant. All right. So moving through there, we're looking at now the western coast of Tennessee and Kentucky, moving in there behind these cells in that green region. That's where you're going to get another marginal tornado risk right there. So you can see that is going to be possible for supercell development. And then keep trucking along there. And then you see all of this area. So Kentucky and Tennessee, it looks like you guys are kind of going to get it first a little bit, and this is ahead of that storm. So if we look on the back end of it, anywhere along that line, that's where you're going to get the severe weather right there. So you're seeing that hook right there, you know what I mean, getting definitely supportive levels for some severe weather. And as this moves into, that's not too bad there. So let's look further south. We're going to look at the top of Mississippi as this kind of curls into Mississippi there. Marginal tornado risk, that's pretty significant. So non-supercell development, still see the potential for severe weather in this. Still got a pretty large hook on that, supportive of updrafts. So marginal tornado risk, but this is the 8th we're looking at right now. 09Z on the 8th, and we're still building up here. So you can kind of see where this is going to kind of happen here as far as how it's going to develop. So it just kind of sits there in the western end, it looks like, of Tennessee, and kind of the mid-Kentucky kind of, sits there and back builds for a little bit, building, and then it just kind of, and I think that what that is that these disturbances in the wind field kind of at the surface level or at the lower level, these storms, they're rebuilding, they're reorganizing, burning off a lot of their energy and then reorganizing again. So they have to, recycle. And then once they get a little bit more organized, they start to push to the east with that low pressure system that's going to be moving through. You're going to see a little bit more of the potential for organization. That's a marginal tornado risk now going through Mississippi and Alabama. As it kind of gets into Alabama, even in these light green kind of, shades and regions, you're going to get some severe weather here. Not too strong at this point, but wait and see what happens. We're getting a little bit darker in here in these in these fields. So we're looking mid Mississippi, got a tornado risk there. Significant supercell development now in the back of this line. Weak supercell development down here. Non-supercell development. Still a pretty significant tornado threat with that. Updrafts are supportive. Yeah, it's pretty strong development. So, we do have that potential for some severe weather going into the later portion of next week. Still got that supercell development right here, significant hail development. Tornado risk looks a little bit lower on the line as far as that's concerned, but this is pretty far out. You know what I mean? We're looking at the end of next week, so a lot of things can change in this GFS model. From the point now going into next week. So once we get to the close range NAM models, you'll be able to see a lot of the differences. We'll know more information as far as the storms moving in. So right now this is a generalization. through the GSF, which usually it's pretty accurate. But like the last two systems that we have had, where I looked at GFS models, you know, a week or even 3 days out, even though they were significant, I didn't think it was going to be like that because we've had significant levels like that before and it didn't turn out that bad. But these two systems were very, very different as far as that was concerned. So, and then when I got to the later NAM models, you know, closer to the event, those levels just kind of shot right up, you know, and it was kind of like that, oh, situation, you know, where you're, you know, a little bit surprised about what I was seeing. So, as these move in closer to the event, I'll keep checking the models, keep checking the NAM models, and see how that is going to, you know, develop later on. But now you see that low pressure system that's going to be moving in west of Texas right here, and it kind of, you know, takes this like eastern track that kind of goes through the northern eastern states here. And as it goes here, everything along and south and southeast of it is probably going to have some pretty heavy development for some severe weather. So that's kind of what I was paying attention to. So mid-Mississippi, lower Mississippi, you got some higher indices of tornado risk, some significant significant supercell development, some significant hail probabilities as far as that's concerned. This is in southern Mississippi on the 8th, 21Z. So, yeah. So we're going to be paying attention to that. A lot of these darker spots of green is where the probability of where this severe weather is going to come into. So everywhere pretty much north of that southern region, it looks like there is still a tornado risk that's pretty significant. You know what I mean? Significant for EF3s. EF2, you know, we're just under the line pretty much on EF3. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. It just means that it could be possible. Still significant supercell development. You know what I mean? But it seems like the further south that you go, it's going to be a little bit more supportive of those of that tornado development. So we're looking at the moisture that's going to be kind of collecting in there. So you can see this is more of a significant tornado risk, and that was just in northern Louisiana, as this kind of collects in there. So you can see that that development that's happening in there as far as that region is concerned. Let's move over to Mississippi. Looking at the same time, 08, so we're on the 8th of April, the 21Z region of time. Looking at the middle of the state right now, pretty low development right now ahead of that. So that kind of indicates to me that there's going to be a line right here or something. There's going to be, you know what I mean, maybe an outflow boundary line or something like that. That's most of the development is going to be happening back here. But along and ahead of this as well, when we're looking at northern Georgia, we got some severe risk up here too on the 8th. Moving into about that time. Got some marginal tornado risk. Nothing as significant as Mississippi is seeing right at this moment in time right now as far as the GFS models are concerned. But still pretty significant to have the possibility of some severe weather, some brief spin-up tornadoes possible, some damaging winds, heavy rainfall, and some hail possibilities likely with this as well. Alright, so moving in, let's go to the next frame and see how it develops from here. Now you start to see this. Okay, this is all that development, that supercell development that we were talking about. So we're looking at these isolated cells that are kind of spawning up here and just spitting all over the southeast states. Okay, and that's going to indicate with the right wind shear being supportive, the LCL height as low as it is, supercell development, then we have that potential with that wind shear coupled with this, that potential for storms to start rotating, causing some damaging potential there with supercell development. So, you know what I mean, tornado risks are still pretty high in some of these regions. As this moves out of Mississippi, still that tornado risk is there. It isn't much lower. It's a little bit lower, it looks like, on the GSF models, but it's still there, and it's still prevalent here. Let's go into the eastern Alabama region right here, where we have this kind of little cluster of cells that are kind of moving through here, these isolated cells. All right, not as high of indices, not as impressive as I would have imagined, but still low-end tornado risk. You know what I mean? So that is definitely favorable within that. And then as this is moving into the western portion of Georgia, marginal tornado risk, I'm just kind of looking at all these green spots, but you know, I mean, let's look at some of the areas that are kind of around this area as well. You know what I mean? And it seems like the atmosphere is just going to be kind of favorable for some of that development. All right, so as we continue on, let's see here. We're going to look at going into South Carolina. South Carolina, you don't have any threat there right now. Let's see. And this might be also because of some unpredictability potential that's going on in here because this is so far out. So that's why I said these models can definitely change. I'm going to have to keep checking on them as we get closer to the event. But you guys there in northern South Carolina at this time, we're looking at 00Z, so about 7 in the morning, something like that. We're looking in the morning hours of the 9th of April 9th. So you guys just be weather aware that day and make sure that you have your warnings turned on for the potential of severe weather. So from northern South Carolina, it seems like it kind of pushes out and it's starting to push to the coast. And as it does so in South Carolina, doesn't seem like anything is too threatening out there. Might have some thunderstorm development, some rumbles of thunder and heavy rainfall. That could be possible with that. All right, so let's look at all of this development that's going on here with this this isolated low that's moving here through. So this low pressure system is gonna. This is the one I was talking about. It's gonna kind of follow this line through the northern portion of you know, the southeast states, going through Tennessee, and then all of this kind of collects south and along southeast of that line of that low. I'm sorry. So in this frame, we're looking at 03. So 8, 9, about 10 o'clock in the morning, somewhere around there on the 9th. All right, let's start with Georgia here. Still that marginal tornado risk. Doesn't seem very high, but it could change in the later models. So severe potential here with these storms that are kind of brewing up here. This might be general thunderstorms at this point. Don't really know. Got to see how it kind of further develops. All right, but let's look along further west of that. Looking at these areas here, marginal severe weather. So you can see this kind of heating that's going on here, this bowed out, you know what I mean? And that, you know, I think that's going to be, you know, coupled along with this elevated mix layer that we got going on this year as far as that's concerned with the El Nino and everything, or La Nina, rather, the way that it's kind of developing later on through the year, which is stirring up a lot of our weather patterns the way that they are. See, in all these frames, you can kind of see that bowing out like there, and I think that that is a disturbance that's going on, and that might be elevating some of these low top cells and things like that moving through. So it might create a little bit more of the potential for severe weather in some of these areas. So, you know, looking in western portion of Alabama, got some supercell development, some significant hail development, some marginal tornado risk. Coupled with that, we're looking around this area here in western Alabama, going into Mississippi, eastern portion of Mississippi. Got a little bit higher of a tornado risk. So I'm assuming by everything that I saw as this system kind of builds through, I believe just by looking at this that the highest risk, if I had to anticipate what the SPC is going to do, I would say that the SPC is probably going to make the highest risk. It's going to be over the majority of Mississippi is what it looks like, because this is where I'm getting the highest indices about a week out. You know, about a week out from the actual event, I'm getting these kind of readings off of this storm system as it pushes through Mississippi. So if you live in, you know, mid to south Mississippi, make sure you guys are prepared going into later next week, because it is coming, and it looks like these are some of the highest levels out of this storm system. Doesn't mean that everywhere else, you know, oh, we're safe. No, I wouldn't say that. Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, South Carolina, maybe even North Carolina in some places. Tennessee, Kentucky, Arkansas, you know what I mean? Basically all these areas, if you were in the Arklatex region from, you know, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, and definitely Louisiana and Mississippi, definitely be weather aware, you know what I mean? Where the weather might not be as bad as it kind of continues further east. It looks like a little bit further in the west, Louisiana, Mississippi region, you guys are going to probably have the highest risk looking at this system right now, just the way it is. You know what I mean? And you're seeing that heating again right there. Boop. a little bowing out right there, you know, and that is that's going to be supportive of a lot of those systems moving through. Let's look at the northeastern. We're looking at the northeastern corner of Louisiana. Marginal tornado risk in some of those areas. Still getting that bowing there. So I'm showing you in every single frame, it looks like that elevated mixed layer, you know, is hard at work in a lot of these systems. Even with this here, you know what I mean? No threat here and everything, but it doesn't mean that close to this location there won't be any threat. LCL height is pretty high. Little, not too much disturbance in, you know, the wind fields at the surface levels and everything. Seems like it's pretty stable, but you're still getting that bowing out right there. So that, you know what I mean, could be, it could support the chance for a lot of development in these areas here. Marginal tornado risk, go a little bit further east of where I was looking, still in the eastern portion of Louisiana, just south of that low pressure system. So, you know, in some spots, no severe weather. In other spots, high severe weather, or mid, you know, low end severe weather. But looking behind this line of storms here in Mississippi, that was kind of on the back end of this right here, but let's go a little further east, and we're going into Mississippi now. Marginal severe weather. So it looks like this portion right here is the strongest indices that we're getting with this storm. We're getting a little bit higher end of those tornado risks. Still getting that bowing right there. You know, so this is definitely coupled with that low pressure system, the elevated mixed layer, all playing a part in this severe weather as it moves through the southeast states. So it looks like that threat is early in the morning on the 9th. That kind of pushes through. So let's continue on and see where it goes from there. All right, so we are looking at the 9th of April at 06Z. All right, so let's see here, about 12, 13, 14, about 2 o'clock, 2:30 or so in the afternoon. This is where we are now. Storms, storm development over northern Georgia into mid Georgia, that kind of areas, those kinds of regions right there. All right, let's pop smack dab right in the middle of this loop here. Not too bad. So definitely thunderstorm development that's within here. So Georgia might not get too much severe weather from this, but there will be a chance for some severe weather as far as that's concerned. Going up into Tennessee, Tennessee region, you got a marginal severe risk that's going on in there at this time. Let's go a little further north of that, kind of touching Kentucky a little bit. All right, and then behind that line, we are kind of looking in that that western side of Tennessee, the far west side of Tennessee. Not too bad there. All right, let's look at Alabama, because it seems like there is a collection of stuff going on in Alabama right now. As far as that's concerned, that doesn't look too bad in the northwest sector, northwest corner of Alabama, going into that. Going further, you know, to the middle, getting a little bit more severe with those storms. So that means, you know, to me, that says that in all this right here, you could have some supercell development that's going on there, coupled with the wind shear. Might be able to rotate some of those storms and get those spinning. So you might have some pretty decent winds in there. At that marginal tornado risk a little bit further south into the mid-Alabama region, kind of along that line right there. So as we're kind of checking this line, what's interesting to me is this bowing right here. You're seeing that bowing right there? And even, you know, in this system right here, you're seeing a lot of this bowing going on. And that bowing indicates to me, see, you're seeing it right there too. And this is on the GSF model. And you're already seeing that bowing a week out that's in this storm development. Now, granted, it's probably not going to happen exactly the way the GSF is predicting it, but it's probably going to be pretty close, relatively close to how it's developing. But that bowing right there tells me that there's going to be very, very strong, there's going to be potential for very strong straight line winds ahead of that bowing right there. And then, you know, it goes green to yellow, and that you got that bow kind of formation right there. A lot of strong winds are going to be ahead of that line as those storms move in. You know what I mean? And pushing with different directions right there, low pressure system right there, coupled with that wind shear, that definitely could spin up some supercell development here. So definitely got to be mindful of that. All right, next frame, we're going into 09Z. So looking at, let's start at the top here, closer to the low pressure system. Going into Kentucky, we're looking at the western kind of side of Kentucky here. So not too bad. It seems like it's kind of tapering off at this point, at least in the north, going up to the north, where you're getting a little bit more of that stable air that's going to be up there. But further south, where we're probably going to have a little bit of that heat advection that's left over, you're going to see those levels kind of increase a little bit in some of the severe potential. All right, let's go into far northern Georgia. Let's take a look there. Classic supercell development possible, but not as strong as I would have anticipated, especially with all this going on in the middle of this. That is, yeah, okay. Yeah, so it seems like the severe capability kind of tapers off, but there still might be some possibility for some severe weather that, could be in here. At this point in northern Georgia through mid-Georgia, kind of looking at that, it seems like up in this region anyways, a little bit, of straight line winds, some strong wind development, heavy rainfall, hail possible, unlikely I would say, probably very heavy rainfall. Could be a little bit of rotation in here, maybe a brief spin up tornado that might be possible within those regions. And then further south, where you're probably getting a little bit more of that daytime heating that's going on. All right. And that is probably going to up the severe chances and potential for some of these more southern regions as far as that. But, as far as that is concerned, these indices don't look as strong to me as far as tornado development. Let's look at about southern mid Alabama. A little bit of a tornado indice there, marginal tornado risk. Got a little bit of that hooking that's going on there and that bowing that's going on. That's your, that's from that elevated mix layer that's happening there. Supercell development, hail development. Definitely a possibility. So that was about, kind of in the middle of Alabama. Let's look at the back of that line, closer to that isolated cell further west. Still a little bit of that marginal tornado risk. Pretty much the same thing that we're looking at there as far as that's concerned. Let's look at Florida Panhandle right here. Coming up on Tallahassee there. A little bit of an increase in the tornado risk as it gets to the Florida Panhandle. That hooking is a little bit stronger. Updraft is supportive. Going to have that heating that's going to be involved there. Cap looks good. So supportive of supercell development, tornadic storms, definitely possible, especially coming from the Gulf there, where you got a lot of that moisture return that's happening here. You got a low pressure system down here, moisture return, heat return that's going to be coming up here, and that's going to make it possible for some of these developments of supercells here. So marginal tornado risk is we're going a little bit further west towards the lower Mississippi region. Let's look at eastern Louisiana here, in the toe section of the boot. Marginal severe risk there. So you got a lot of these thunderstorm developments that's coming in here, even with this bowing that's in here on the back end of it. Definitely could have some moderate rotation in here as well as strong winds as this kind of continues on. And I don't know how it's going to kind of develop as it moves, probably northeast here. And I think it's just kind of swinging over like a door, you know what I mean, heading east. So marginal tornado risk when we get a little bit further south of that. And so, yeah, that marginal tornado risk, that's going to be carrying out a little bit less of a cap here. So, and it's going to be moving into that region, from the Gulf of Mexico, where you're going to get a lot more of that heating. That's probably going to help those convection levels in that area right there. Along back this line, going into Mississippi, still got a little bit of that marginal tornado risk that's going to be left over as it moves out of your area. Excuse me. And then this is the next frame we're looking at on the 9th, 12Z. All right, so we got a lot of dark green spots here, and that's going to be those significant areas for tornado development. This is showing you the hardest rainfall. These orange areas right here are going to be showing you the hardest rainfall, the hardest hail possibilities, and that's where your thunderstorm development is going to be at. But along and front and behind these lines, that's where you're going to get the possibility for that convection. Marginal severe risk as this kind of pushes eastward. We're looking at about eastern middle Georgia there. Seems like the severe risk kind of tapers off a little bit in some areas. So the atmosphere at this point might be changing as far as that's concerned. Let's look at the back of that line. Still a little bit of a severe risk there. So it seems like that is going to be more favorable in those northern, mid to northern regions right there. Even, excuse me, even if we look in the light green regions there, yeah, not too bad. A little bit different of a situation there, you know what I mean? Where so there's probably going to be, yeah, this front that's going to be kind of moving through here and everything, and the air is going to become a little bit more stable here. Still got this low pressure system that's moving up in there. Not too much of a severe threat going into Kentucky, it looks like. And then as it moves into the Ohio Valley, heavy rainfall is probably going to be prevalent with that system as well. Look at all the snow development that's going to be happening up here in the northern Midwest, and then along the Northeast as well. And that's that curvature of that system that kind of bobs there like a cork, you know what I mean, north of Pennsylvania, and then, you know, later on it brushes out to the Atlantic. A lot of heavy snowfall that's going to be happening up there. And probably a little bit of winds that are going to be happening too, because you got all this happening down there, and you all up there in the Northeast usually get the northern section of all the crap that is left over from the Southeast states. All right, so, but returning to the Southeast, so it looks like Georgia, your marginal severe risk is going to be kind of tapering off as it kind of moves out of that area. The atmosphere starts to stabilize a little bit and recollect as this kind of gets separated from the low as well. Along and back that line, let's go down to the southern Alabama region. Still a leftover marginal risk there as far as severe weather. All right. Not too bad. Going back towards the Mississippi line. Seems like that kind of tapers off as far as the severe risk. So, okay, so this little section right here, that kind of concerns me because a lot of times you can see, you know, when it's got kind of a notch in there like that, that might be some of the winds that's incorporating with that, with kind of getting some inflow in there. So let's check right there in that region right there, see what we get. Marginal severe risk, but yeah, favorable updraft. So you're getting a little bit of that inflow that's in there, which may or may not spin up tornadoes or anything like that. It may be rotating for a little bit, but at best, it'll just be a severe thunderstorm. At worst, you could get a couple tornadoes out of it. You know what I mean? But with a risk like that, they might be on the low end. Brief spin-up tornadoes possible. You know what I mean? That might last a few minutes, you know, and not do a severe amount of damage. So along behind that, we've got a little bit more of a severe risk that's going on there, and that is in the very low, it's not even on land, we're still looking at an ocean here, south of the panhandle of Florida. All right, moving into these regions further west of it and southwest of it, still got a little bit of that marginal severe risk that's left over. But a lot of that is going to be kind of moving into the southeast areas, you know, with a lot of that heat advection that's going to be moving through, a lot of that moisture return and that heat return that's going to be coming in there. So, you know, there's a window of time. It looks like that is going to be kind of severe on the 8th, moving through Mississippi, and that's going to be, it looks like the highest risk is the day of the 8th. So you want to be weather aware if you live in Mississippi, even Alabama, pretty much all three of these states, Arkansas, Louisiana, all these, you know, this whole region. Be weather aware on the 8th and even the 7th, you know what I mean? And make sure you're paying attention to what's happening with this system as it moves in on the 8th and then the 9th across the southeast, you know. But it looks like the highest risk is centralized over, looks like mid to lower Mississippi is kind of what it looks like. But let's go to the next frame here and continue on. We're looking at the 9th 15Z. Is that 15Z? As this kind of pushes a little bit further southeast. So Georgia, the severe potential kind of tapers off there. This is just snow forecast, it looks like mostly. Going to be that colder system up there that's kind of moving out of that region. Nothing really much for you guys up there in Virginia, or North Carolina, I'm sorry, as it moves through. All right, so looking there, let's go back a little bit further west Georgia. Yeah, it looks like that kind of weakens quite a bit. Let's look back. We're looking mid-lower Alabama. Marginal tornado risk. A little bit of that hooking that's going on there. So you could have some isolated tornadoes, some brief spin-ups that might happen in these areas as it pushes southeast. A little bit further west of that and a little bit further southwest, I would say, get a little bit higher of a tornado risk. So still the potential of some brief spin-up tornadoes, some of which could be a little bit stronger on the scale and may last a little bit longer. Usually when tornadoes form in the kind of further in the back of the line towards the rear of these squall lines, that's where they're going to typically last longer and they might be a little bit stronger in strength. So that's kind of something to watch out for. All right, so moving south, we're kind of looking at the southern region now of the Panhandle. Seems like that. All right, let's look aloft in front of that line. So you're gonna get a tornado risk around Tallahassee. Could have some isolated tornadoes with that as well, along and ahead of that line. It seems like the severity kind of tapers off as you get further north into Georgia, getting into the mid portion of Georgia, and that just kind of gets weaker. That's what I'm kind of seeing here. But the Panhandle of Georgia, yeah, significant tornado threat there. Some supercell development, not on the higher spectrum of things, but it still could drop a couple of tornadoes that could be some damaging winds and damaging storms. I can't really say as to a guesstimation as far as enhanced Vegeta scale, but you know what I mean? If I had to guess, I'd say it looks like going to be on the lower ends of the spectrum, but that is right now. So that's just, and then eventually this kind of pushes through. You see that low that's kind of still going through Kentucky, and as it continues along, now you're getting a little bit of that severe risk along the northern Tennessee-Kentucky line. Doesn't look like anything that's going to be significantly tornadic. I don't think that you're going to have the efficient wind shear that you need for strong rotation. And let's see, a little bit further north. Yeah, so that severity kind of drops as you go further north. So it's a little bit, even with this low pressure system, it seems like it's still got it's still got a decent amount of stability up there, and I don't think that you're going to have the amount of wind shear up in these areas going into the Ohio Valley in order to support a lot of that supercell development. Let's look out here in the west and see what they're getting here. LCL's pretty high up there, actually. All right, so, and as this in the southeast kind of, moves along east, it looks like it's moving just straight east now. So let's look ahead and aloft of that line. This is, supportive of updrafts, but not really at, the higher levels. And this is as it's kind of moving out to the Atlantic Ocean and just kind of moving out of the area. So it seems like that kind of tapers off in severity and instability. So, all right, so along and behind this line, we're looking at the Georgia-Alabama border now. No disturbance in the wind field at surface level. It's really going to limit the amount of rotation that you're going to have with some of those. But then you move further south into the Florida Panhandle, and then we're going to get like some of that marginal tornado risk that's going on. This is a low-end tornado risk, but you do have some significant supercell development in here, which means that the moisture return and the wind shear that's coming from the Gulf of Mexico is going to be favorable for for a lot of that rotation. All right. Well, let's look a little further west into Alabama. Got some severe threat there as well. All right, and the rest of this is kind of collected over the Gulf of Mexico. All right, and this is moving a little bit more southeast track now, or yeah, more southeast track. You got this low pressure system still moving through Kentucky up here. And it gets a little bit darker on the spectrum with that. But still not seeing any weather that's significant as far as severe weather. So it looks like you're going to have some isolated thunderstorm development Could get some rumbles of thunder and some torrential rainfall. Maybe a little bit of winds, but I don't think anything that's going to be too crazy. Now we go into Tennessee here. You guys have some severe regions here. Let's look at some of these lower mid areas right here where I just looked at here. Cap is a little bit stronger, but you know, still low enough. LCL is low enough for severe development. Let's look a little bit further east, going into some of those other darker regions. Got some staggering levels here. Kind of shooting out across. Alright, North Georgia, pretty much right in the center of the state. A little bit of that severe risk that's going to be going. Okay, so, and then southern Georgia, right on the southeast corner, it looks like. A lot of that green is showing up as this kind of moves through. You got this supercell this thunderstorm development that's right here in the middle, right here. It's not going to show up anything severe with it, but yeah, might get a little bit of rotation that's isolated in some of these thunderstorms. All right, and along behind that, you're getting that marginal tornado risk as it kind of moves along the border of Georgia and Florida. Up here in northern Florida, coming out of the Panhandle. And then, you know, further on behind that, you're getting a little bit more significant tornado risk as it moves through the Panhandle behind the supercell development. So that wind shear is taking those isolated cells kind of behind the bulk of that right there, and it's spinning these. It's being able to spin these supercells. So you're gonna have a lot of moisture return, possibly some heat that's going to be in there, causing the instability to be a little bit more further, you know what I mean, on the line for unstable and significant for supercell development. Look at these hail levels. You're definitely going to have some hail in these areas going through the Florida Panhandle. Pretty high indices of hail that's going in here. Even on the further edge of right along the coast of the Gulf of Mexico on the Panhandle, still getting supercell development and hail possibilities down there. Marginal severe risk as this kind of moves along. Let's look at the southern end of that thunderstorm development. Still getting that supercell development, significant hail moving across. Let's go to the next frame. All right, moving in there, and then it seems like the severe risk kind of tapers off a little bit and starts to weaken. So then you're looking at severe thunderstorm possibilities along and behind this going in towards Jacksonville. Still a little bit severe. There could be some development in these thunderstorms that are kind of bulking across here, but it seems like it's pretty limited in instability as far as that's concerned. Doesn't mean it can't happen. Just means it's kind of lower on the scale of possibility. But the predictability might be a little bit too low at this point in time, anyways. So it looks like the severe risk further north, Kentucky and Tennessee area, seems like it's gonna, as it kind of gets further east, it looks like your severe risk is going to be kind of out the door after that. Still a little bit in the southern portions of Tennessee as it kind of moves along that line. And then in Georgia as well, still getting some of that marginal tornado risk, or I mean marginal severe thunderstorm risk. All right, and this is the 10th at 00Z, so 7:30 in the morning we're looking at. So basically in the evening of the 9th, moving through the Florida Panhandle. So the 9th going into the 10th, or yeah, the 9th going into the 10th in the early morning hours is kind of when this is washing through. And then as it looks like going into the early afternoon or around noon kind of time, this is going to be kind of moving out to the coast on the 10th. All right, and then still tracking the weather as it moves to the east from the Kentucky, Tennessee areas into North and South Carolina. Now, South Carolina, that's about your time here where you're starting to get a little bit of that severe weather left over early morning on Saturday. But it doesn't seem like anything that is significant as far as tornadic storms, which is kind of good. All right, blows further out to the east, going through the northern portion of South Carolina. Seems like that severe threat kind of tapers off. Cap kind of takes over, and then the low pressure system moves out. Still got a little bit of lingering stuff going up into northern North Carolina, into Virginia and that kind of region right there, going through North Carolina on the eastern side, going towards the coast. Not too severe. Some rainfall going in there. Got some lighter green that's going back there. It seems like that's just going to be leftover rainfall and precipitation as it kind of moves out to the east, which eventually kind of tapers off. And there it goes. And this is at leftover, possibly winter weather. Could have some cold temperatures in this section of that storm because this is the portion that was dropping from the New York region, upper Pennsylvania region. So this was kind of dropping, and I think that those temperatures might be a little bit on the chilly side, so you might have some snow in some of those regions as this moves. You can see it kind of sits there for a little bit. Yeah, it kind of incorporates there before moving out to the coast there. See that blue region in there? That's where you're probably going to get your snow and your ice as far as that is concerned, as far as heaviness. You're still getting a little bit of that winter weather out there to the west moving in with that high pressure system as it kind of comes into Kansas and Oklahoma region. Well, it seems like it kind of stays there, northern New Mexico and what is that, Colorado there. All right, so going back one. All right, so we see all that moving out to the coast here. We're looking at the 11th now, 7-something in the morning. A little bit of that leftover precipitation in mid and northern Georgia. Then you got this other stuff that's moving here. Let me go back one. Moving here through Arkansas into Mississippi. I think these are kind of sub-severe kind of leftovers from this low pressure system moving through. So I would say rainfall and general thunderstorms, as far as it looks right now, moves into the mid portion of Mississippi, or I'm sorry, Alabama. Still up there in upper Mississippi on the eastern end. Yeah, everything looks pretty sub-severe at that point as far as that low going in. Then when it gets into Georgia, then you got some buildup of these isolated cells that's going on. So let's look at the western side of Alabama, or I'm sorry, the eastern side of Alabama, rather. And then as it moves into western Georgia, it looks like it stays relatively sub-severe, but let's look on the southern end of it. All right. It's like I'm searching for this. Where's the severe threat? Where is it? I know it's there. Where? But it's not. So that's a good thing. Low disappears. It starts to kind of organize and stabilize a little bit there as far as the atmosphere. A little bit of that hooking that's going on there. A little bit less heating, it looks like. So our temperatures with the cold front might be kind of moving through there, which is going to be a good thing because it's going to bring back a little bit of that atmospheric stability and maybe limit the potential for some of these storms to develop. Yeah, so this is a non-severe system as far as I can see. Low kind of incorporates as it moves through the panhandle of Florida. On the northern end of this, no severe weather. On the south end of this, sub-severe. Looking at northern Tennessee there. Yeah, so that's just kind of the leftovers, I think, moving through there, so that wouldn't be anything that I would worry about. So, basically, 8th all the way to the 10th is what we're looking at across the southeast states. I would say all southeast states should be weather aware on pretty much the day of 8th through the 10th, and even to the 11th in some regions, but as it moves into the 11th, I think that's just kind of the leftover stuff that's going to be, going to drag and across along, but behind it. I don't think that anything is going to be really at the higher end of severe levels. So I'm going to keep checking on these models as we get closer to the event, and as we look at the close range models when we get into next week. I'll definitely check it out. And you can do this yourselves as well. You can look up the Storm Prediction Center. If you just Google it, it'll come to the National Weather Service's site, and you can look at their reports and their findings as far as the week is concerned, as they continue watching this system as it pulls through. So there is a potential for severe weather going in, the 8th through the 10th. So I would be weather aware, everybody in the southeast states, moving into that time frame. Just make sure you have all your things ready and you have a plan in place for your family to make sure that everybody's safe. And let's hope it isn't that bad. But I'm gonna check back and see how the levels change. So it could get better, it could get worse. We'll just have to see. But I'll do another video and I'll keep updating you through the weekend and into next week as far as how this storm is progressing. So I'd like to thank you all for watching. Excuse me, I got some dry throat. It's dry down here right now. It's cold temperatures. I'd like to thank you all for watching. Please like and subscribe and come back and check out what I got going up coming on later into next week. I appreciate it, and you all have a great weekend.